Welcome to this review. We will be looking at Chernobylite, a 2021 first-person shooter survival horror. We will look at both the positives and negatives, and a bit about the story and whether I can recommend. I think, as the title suggests, I will be on the negative end of recommendation, but we will see as we conclude. So, to begin with the story, it takes place in the exclusion zone surrounding the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. But 30 years after the disaster that occurred there, the zone has become of interest to a military contractor called the NAR, who have begun to carry out experiments in the zone for a substance that uniquely grows there called Chernobylite, the titular substance. The substance is also found in various creatures, or some creatures that appear in the zone that are extra dimensional and are hostile to humans and any life there. The protagonist that you play as is the Ukrainian physicist Igor. So Igor worked at the nuclear power plant before the disaster 30 years ago, but this time he again visits because he's on a mission to find his fiancée Tatiana, who disappeared shortly after the Chernobyl disaster when Igor was working in that zone. So basically, you want to infiltrate the main area of the plant, which needs to be done strategically because it's defended by NAR defenses, both in the plant and around it. The strongest element of this game is the base building aspect. So as you begin the story, you will inherit a warehouse um, that overlooks the map zone. So the warehouse or factory place that you inherit has a bunch of stats that need to be monitored. In terms of these, you're looking at radiation levels, air purity, the amount of electricity and energy needed to operate the machines, as well as companion comfort. We'll talk a bit more about companion shortly. So basically, this is your home space where you retire after daily missions, and it's where you store all your items and materials that you find out in the zone. These are used to create healing items, weapons, various kinds of benches, Chernobylite, creating stations as well, and all these various aspects that you need to survive in the world, including ammunition, upgrading of guns and weaponry, you're creating of new weapons as you go along, and then other items like Chernobylite again and lockpicks, both of which are used to access areas on levels holding value materials that you wish to collect. So there's a strong companion element here too. You will find companions the more you go on side missions and on the main missions, and you can ask them to come back to your base, to your warehouse, and then you sort of are required to sustain them in terms of food, in terms of their mental well-being and health and such things, and their comfort level. This is important, otherwise they become dissatisfied and may leave. In terms of the comfort level, you are required to look after them in the sense of creating for them beds, um, other entertainment items like televisions and game station and tables and things like that. Even just decorating the warehouse with a few items like pop plants and so on, and lights as well, will bring up the companion comfort. And then the air purity. The exclusion zone is full of radiation, so you want to keep your base clean, and you will have to build air purifiers. As well as whenever you build benches and any workstation, you need the appropriate amount of electricity to do it. Connected to the companions that you'll have in your base is the opportunity to do skills. You will, just through activities in the world, you will acquire skill levels. Again, this is very random. There's no bar or meter that shows you how far you are to attaining a skill. But at random moments, just interacting with a random item in the world, you will acquire skill. So these can be taken and collected and taken back to the base, and each companion has unique skill training abilities that you can use. So I'm talking about things like stealth, firepower, another companion being able to assist you in making healing items at a lesser cost, and so on. So these companions are valuable and they need to be sustained. So every day you go out to perform a mission, you will choose from a mission list, which could be 6 or 7. And if you have companions, you can assign them to a mission so that they can do that for you in your place. Whereas you can assign yourself to another mission you want to do. And this is valuable because at the end of the mission, if your companions succeed at their objective, they will bring home valuable items such as food or materials like electronic parts, mechanical parts, flammable liquids, and that sort of thing that you require for just sustaining your base and creating new and advanced weaponry. The companions can fail at their missions, they have a statistic. When you assign them to a mission, you'll see a probability of them completing the mission. So to increase their probability, you can craft for them a weapon and a piece of armor. And of course, the more you upgrade the weapon, the greater the possibility or probability is that your companion will succeed on a mission. So it's a very simple system. It's just one piece of armor, one weapon, you equip it on them, and you will see a rise in the probability. At the end of each day, you will return. Igor has a bed to sleep in, which does not provide any healing qualities or properties, but you also have to feed yourself and your base, your however many companions you have, and so on. So the more companions, then obviously the more resources it would require. In terms of the world map, as I said, it's set in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, which has been broken down into several zones, and these zones are diverse enough. It'll become a bit problematic because you will be retreading them over and over, so they do lose their mystery and lose their wonder. But anyway, it's diverse. You have the central apartment blocks. In the center of the zone, you have swamps, dilapidated villages, bunkers under the ground, jail systems, and all these various sort of designs which do keep the experience at least interesting for a while. In terms of the world itself, the further you go, the more it will change over time, and you will see the more you complete missions, the greater the radiation will be in these zones, the greater the Chernobylite infestation will be with the creatures it has involved. So it's basically like this Chernobylite power substance is kind of an infestation that's infecting the whole zone and everybody in there. But in terms of the graphics, I'll say it's good in the most part. It looks realistic. There's obviously the forests and shrubbery, and things are very minimalistic in terms of architecture. It's classic Soviet era simplistic designs. So you'll come across that repeatedly, but that just seems accurate to history. There are problems with the world. There is, especially in the foresty environments where there's a lot of there's just way too much cluster. And this means you will be getting stuck on things repeatedly. There are items and objects you should be able to scale, like I'm talking very small wooden fences that you cannot. Often this becomes particularly pronounced when you get into a firefight, say in the forest. The ability or the chance to lose sight of the enemy is incredibly high, just because there's so many things in the immediate vicinity that you lose track. Most of the environments in this game are these cluttered ones. One or two zones are open, will be more open-ended. Like, for example, there is a silo mission where you can go there to collect resources or sort of medicine drops and ammo drops and so on. And this would be the one sort of, at least in my experience, exception to all this cluttered things in these environments, which really brought it down for me. It might be realistic. A forest that hasn't been taken care of for a long time after this disaster will inevitably be overgrown. But it's just that the system that surrounds this in terms of the gunplay and the sort of visuals when you're in combat just doesn't do it justice, and it sort of more brings the experience down, at least in my view. Probably the major issue in this game that actually caused me to eventually stop playing. I would want to say that although I stopped playing because of the frustrations, the game does have its fun elements, and I specifically refer to the base building and the going out to collect items in the world and just keep on improving your base, improving your arsenal, and so on. And especially if you play this on hard like I did, you're going to want to upgrade your weapons very quickly. But anyway, the main issue is with the main antagonist, who's called the Black Stalker. So what this person is a guy dressed up in a black suit, a black attire, who will sort of teleport into the map when you're playing very often. It's almost like I thought the first two times that this happened, I thought it was a scripted event as part of the story. But then I very soon learned that it's actually just an automatic system. You start the level, within a few minutes, this guy will pop up and you'll enter through a teleport. He'll be donning a mask, suit, and he has a powerful Chernobylite powered weapon. And the problem is that this sort of requires a lot of resources if you want to fight him. And if you want to sneak away from him, it's very difficult to do. He pops up on the map for a whole 4 minutes, which is a long time. And even if you run away and he doesn't even see you, he'll always teleport to your location within a few meters. And this happens so often that not only does it expend valuable resources, but you hear the same lines. There's a very lack of diversity in lines, saying lines in this game, both in terms of the Black Stalker, but also just the general NAR soldiers and things like that. And this thing is the Black Assassin Stalker can appear at very inconvenient times, and I'm talking about missions. And when you engage an NPC, you can't actually interact with him unless all the enemies in the environment are either killed or if they go away. And this once happened when on a mission when I had to enter this building which with high toxic levels. You actually need a special mask to go in and to find this NPC in there. And what happened is that the Black Stalker appeared at this very time, and there's no way to exit this building because it sort of closes as you go in. And I eventually found this NPC with my limited air supply, and I couldn't interact with him because the Black Stalker was right outside the building and he couldn't get inside. So I had to essentially just sit there for 4 minutes while my air supply ran out. Fortunately, I actually had a lot of air supply because I had collected it and done a lot of exploring in the environment. But conceivably, I could have had 3 minutes of air supply and I would have died just because I couldn't interact or get outside the environment. This happened at least twice. Another time being when I was fighting a creature which I had to kill for the side mission, and the Black Stalker appears in the middle of this, so I fail. So essentially, this destroyed the experience for me. I would actually end up rushing through missions, just sprinting straight for the end goal, whatever it is, and then quickly teleport back to the base just to avoid the Black Stalker. You can sort of see his presence coming because there will become this green Chernobylite sort of lightning storm that comes from the distance and eventually arrives on the map, and there he appears. So very frustrating, and this really took away the survival horror experience because it's not a very nice experience or very survival feeling experience if all you do is just rushing from one end to the other, avoiding enemies, not exploring in sufficient detail because you want to escape this game mechanic. So I think it's really bad. That's the reason I ultimately stopped playing the game. That's not to say there weren't fun aspects in the game, as I was referring to earlier. Some other issues that are sort of pressing is first the gunplay. It's not bad. It's not like a failure, but it's not good at all. It's very stock standard. It can feel a bit clunky. The enemy AI, when you engage them in gunfights, and I'm talking about the creatures and the NAR soldiers, they just have the same predictable responses and attack patterns that you'll get very used to after a while. Um, and instead of taking on enemies head on, like say a group of 3 NAR soldiers, I would instead just sneak past. Or if it's lucky, I can do a stealth attack. But even the stealth system seemed a bit offish. There were times when I would one of the soldiers would be isolated from the group, and then I would do a stealth attack on him, kill him, and I'll be noticed by another soldier a few meters away who shouldn't have sort of picked me up on that. Another bit of polish issue is the vision cone of the enemies. So if you are sneaking around a soldier and he starts to notice you, they'll go from white to yellow and then eventually red, and he will attack you. This happens for the NAR soldiers, but for the enemy creatures in the world, it's just a red cone, which is strange because this color cone even emerges when these enemy creatures, I'm talking about the Chernobylite creatures, they don't even notice you. There were a lot of times where I thought I was spotted because this red cone came up, so I'd run away only to find out the creature did not spot me. It's almost just a bit of a polished issue where they forgot to actually implement the right colors. I think it's just, you can also see that this is a budget title in many ways. I talked about the lack of variety in voice lines that will eventually just become very overwhelming, I think. Well, you would have heard them many times over your experience. Other things like enemy variety. This is probably another main issue. No, this is another main issue, is that the enemy variety is extremely limited. And I won't say how many types of enemies there are, but you can count them on one hand. At least as far as I played 18 hours of this game, and it's around about 20 to 24. The issue of the English translation. So obviously you have an English translation of the game, otherwise it's in Ukrainian. And this stood out quite badly. The Ukrainian voice that Igor has is very masculine, and I'm talking very like a rough voice, very deep voice, aggressive voice. But if you actually change the translation to English, the the translated voice changes enormously to almost like this very posh English British accent that bears no resemblance whatsoever to the Ukrainian voice. So it definitely stood out for me a lot. I played with the English translation on, and it was a bit of an issue for me. So I mean, in general, the game works. It's not like it doesn't work, but it's not great in my mind. It has various frustrations, which ultimately took me out of the experience. The concept is great. Uh, it should be a game of mystery, but if the Black Stalker, the main antagonist, is always sort of attacking you every time you enter a map, it takes away from the mystery. Takes away. You eventually familiarize yourself too much with this before the end of the game. The nicer aspects are obviously, as I explained, the base building, the um, companion system, and so on. So it's not entirely bad, but it's definitely not good in my mind. If you wish to purchase it, I would recommend doing it on a budget scale. Get it at a deeply deflated price. Um, yeah, so that is my review of Chernobylite. I hope it's been somewhat informative and that it can assist you in your decision if you want to purchase this or not.